and laughed at. Now people aren't laughing. I mean, does it have to get really bad before it gets better? Where do you expect this to go? I mean, do you expect them to be able to implement stuff like this? I mean, this does tell us a lot about the makeup of our government that they're attempting things like this.
Well, it does, and it also is the most dangerous element here is what's become maybe a subtext of our national discourse, a risk-free society. Anything that anybody says will make us safer is okay. The rack and screw, if it results in vandalizing due process, detaining people without accusation or charge, anything you just yell, it makes us possibly safer, even though it doesn't. They get away with it. And that's just the opposite of what the Constitution is about. The default position that the Founding Fathers wanted, that was revolutionary at the time, was that individual liberty is the default. The government can't do anything unless it gives a really strong reason about why they should interfere with your physical and mental liberty and freedom. It doesn't mean an insurmountable hurdle, but that's the default position is liberty. Now, no, just make the government bigger, TSA, more screening, whatever. Anything goes that will arguably make us safer. You got to have some risk in life. It takes risk when you get out of bed, Somebody could come up and drive a car when you're on the sidewalk.
Well, Bruce, as you know, historically, I'd like you to speak to this briefly. Tyrants always say it's for your own good, and historically, the greatest danger outside of natural death, the most unnatural death that we've seen, has been death by government or enslavement or impoverishment by government. I mean, this is the most dangerous thing, as George Washington said, like fire, government is a dangerous servant and a fearful master.
That's exactly right. And that's why, and it's not to say that individuals can't perpetrate evil. They can. But in magnitudes of danger, the government is capable of vastly more wretchedness, destruction of liberty, death, than any private individual or group of individuals. And that's why the government is the one where the greatest scrutiny has to be put upon. And it was James Madison, just think about this. This is over 200 years ago. He pointed out and he warned. He said the instruments of repression that are used initially to fight a foreign danger are invariably used by tyrants to destroy liberty at home. This is the greatest prescience that had ever been uttered by an American statesman. He knew exactly what's going to happen. So first, okay, we're just going to use these special procedures in Afghanistan, and then Iraq, then Yemen, then Somalia. And now they're on our American soil. And what I fear, Alex, is that if there's anything like another 9/11, or even somebody who stands up and says, all right, Iran's got nuclear weapons, a president's going to declare martial law. The liberty's going to be over. Okay, we have military commissions, and I'll restore the Constitution when I think it's safe. And I'm fearful right now we have an American culture that's so effete in its defense of individual liberty and so willing to accept vassalage to some big brother government who yells safety, that the president would get away with it.
Well, Bruce,
Bruce, on the street,
as you know, that's what the entire architecture. I'm going to skip this network break here, so stations shouldn't cover this up. It's a network break. I'm going to skip it. We only got you at the bottom of the hour, and this is so important. Constitutional law expert, congressional expert, Ron Paul's main advisor on legal issues, constitutional lawyer, Bruce Fein. He's also an author. Bruce, let's shift gear in the same area, but shifting gears, look at Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich has been attacking Ron Paul, calling him a joke. Donald Trump's been calling him a joke, when Donald Trump is a joke by any yardstick. Mr. Eminent Domain, Mr. Democratic Party contributor who claims he's a Republican, clearly a ringer. But Newt Gingrich has now been endorsed by the former Federal Reserve head of Kansas City, Herman Cain. And Newt Gingrich, who is for indefinite detention, torture, all of this, who's for carbon taxes, who's for all these different globalist things, he is now the front runner. Ron Paul's admitted #2 now in Iowa and other states. What's your view on Newt Gingrich and what's wrong with mainline Republicans, or do you think these polls are a fraud? How could any conservative with half a brain like Newt Gingrich?
I don't know. This guy is the epitome of inside the Beltway cynicism. He'll say one thing one day, the other the next day. He exploits all the political chicanery known to mankind. A historian for Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, $40-50 million that he gets out for lobbying Congress on his health care issue. He's an egomaniac. He cheats on his wife. He has run. He claims that he's great for frugality, and he has a Tiffany's bank account of $500,000. He manipulates and utilizes nonprofit organizations to benefit his political campaign and his profit-making organizations for free. I mean, and he spouts anything under the sun, no matter how glib yet absurd they are. I mean, his statement, for example, the president should flout decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court if they think they're wrong. You know? Wow, that's really something. This is somebody who is talking about Ron Paul as being a joke. This guy would destroy the greatest conception of all constitutions in the history of the world, judicial review, in 1787. And not the whim of Newt Gingrich. No, the president just the heck with the Supreme Court. And you see how absurd that is, because he's at the same time saying, oh, if the Supreme Court declares the health care bill unconstitutional, then it should fall. But at the same time, he's basically saying, well, Obama could just ignore it and implement his health care anyway. I mean, the guy is a total intellectual jumble of contradictions and cynicism. And I believe that the only reason that explains his rise is that he's not Mitt Romney. And Mitt is so statuesque. He's so off-putting as a candidate. They're sort of scrambling, the Republicans are, for somebody else. And Newt is the candidate for that particular time. But I believe as more of these warts in Newt become more known and prominent, he will fall like a shooting star and a comet out of the sky and be destroyed, because his character is so flawed that it simply cannot withstand a sustained public scrutiny.
Wow, Bruce Fein is on fire. Amazing analysis, absolutely on target. Looking at Newt Gingrich, it's like shark teeth. All these different politicians come forward. The public learns about them. They fall away. We've seen it with Perry, with Romney, with Newt, with Bachmann, with all of them. Only Ron Paul has stayed number one, number two, or number three in every straw poll, every scientific poll. He now is, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a Ron Paul supporter. I'm always a realist. He really is the front runner in all the big polls. He beats Obama handily. I mean, he is the man. He should be our next president. He's been dead on about why we're in so much trouble. He's the only candidate that will actually address it. And if we don't elect Ron Paul, if the power structure doesn't elect Ron Paul, I mean, as corrupt as the power structure is, they can't just keep robbing and stealing. They're going to kill the golden goose. Yeah. Your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's right. But the history of empires is a history of self-ruination. But I certainly agree with your assessment of Ron Paul. And this is what I can say with 100% first-hand certainty. He is the only candidate who's not running for self-aggrandizement. He's the only candidate who's not driven by egomania. He's the only candidate that we know when he's in the Oval Office and he makes a decision, he will be based upon what he thinks are best for the nation and those yet to be born. It won't be based upon the next day's polls or political maneuvering or footprints in the sand of time or anything like that. And that's enormously important, because there are going to be issues that we can't contemplate or only can be dimly perceived right now that will emerge in the next 4 years. And we need to have confidence in the character of the man, that no matter what, that his big focus and his only North Star will be what's good for the country. It's not my particular ego that's at stake. It's not like, well, I'm too much bothered in trying to run the world to worry about the local economy because I'm worrying about Tibet or Nepal or Yemen or something like that. He wants to defend the United States, safety and the economy, but in the United States. And that's why I think he should be a hands-down pick. And remember, this idea that Ron Paul, he doesn't have a foreign policy or it's weak is absurd. If there's one person who's the most hawkish on defending Americans as opposed to defending Afghans or defending Iraqis or Yemenis, it is Ron Paul, because he wants our defense resources devoted to protecting us.
And he was also in the Air Force.
Protecting everybody under the sun.
Let me expand on that. Netanyahu kicked out the last head of Mossad because he didn't want to strike Iran. And the former head of Mossad was in Haaretz the other day saying it'll be a catastrophe if they strike them right now. Iran's already threatened to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. They've shot down a drone. All of this is accelerating. But Obama wants the political distraction. Netanyahu may want it. And then Ron Paul got banned from this latest debate. And the group said, well, because you're not realistic on Iran. when I've seen polls of the majority of Israelis don't want to do this. And I know you're advising him on legal things in the Constitution, but where is a preemptive strike with the U.S. backing it in the Constitution on Iran? And then when you actually look at what Ron Paul actually says, it's the researched view of the big think tanks, of the CIA. Ron Paul's the only one actually living in reality geopolitically.
That is absolutely right. There's nothing in the Constitution that authorizes preemptive war, or Don Rumsfeld called them anticipatory self-defense. A defense means you defend yourself against an attack. Not that you initiate an attack, you defend against an attack, and that's what the Constitution says in the preamble or otherwise. And moreover, Ron Paul's position is the sensible position. And let's scope out what the other side says. First, they say, well, Iran is so crazy. Even if you attempt to deter them by promising nuclear incineration if they attack us, they crave self-destruction. Well, that's insane. What did the Iranians do? Even with the Ayatollahs and the mullahs, they negotiated the release of our hostages finally from Tehran. They brought a conclusion to the Iraqi-Iran war brought by Saddam Hussein. Remember, we shot down an airliner, a civilian airliner, the USS Vincennes over the Persian Gulf. We killed over 200. They negotiated that, so we paid them money. They didn't go to war. They're like any other country. You know, the idea that somehow Iran displays more, irrationality than North Korea and we can't deter them with our nuclear arms is ridiculous. Moreover, let's understand, why does Iran cling to nuclear arms? Largely because we have had a policy championed and initiated by Newt Gingrich of overthrowing the government by force and violence. They remember our overthrow of Mossadegh, the only democratically elected official in this, in the last centuries in Iran. We overthrew him to get the Shah of Iran in.
Bruce, it's worse than that, as you know. It's now admitted that since Bush 5 years ago and currently, England, Israel, and the U.S. have been running covert operations. Here's France 24. U.S.-Israel covert war against Iran suspected. It's not suspected when giant bases are blowing up.
Yeah, and scientists are assassinated. Yeah, you're exactly right. We know that. So, when a country is confronting an adversary who says we're going to overthrow your regime, they're ordinarily likely to look at self-defense, and they see what happened to Gaddafi in Libya. Gaddafi wasn't attacking the United States. We just got up and said, hey, let's throw that guy out. So we are creating the environment that creates the incentive for them to.
Let me ask you this question.
And this is one point I'd like to make, Alice, just to finish this out. The only issue in which all Iranians agree, including those who despise the mullahs, is they want and need a nuclear armament now because of the United States. We are unifying the Iranians. And the fact is, other countries, when they have reached a level of security, have abandoned nuclear weapons. It's not like once you get them, you never give them up. South Africa had them at one time. They got rid of them. Belarus had them. They got rid of them. Kazakhstan got rid of them. Ukraine had them at one time. Got rid of them. So listen, I don't champion proliferation. But the fact is, if you have a regime that's not threatened, you could probably develop the internal consensus to get rid of them, because basically, they're useless in ordinary wars. All the nuclear weapons we had didn't win in Vietnam. All the nuclear weapons that Israel had nothing to do with the Yom Kippur War. And so we have the ability, by not threatening to overthrow regimes, to create a climate where they won't have any incentive to create.
Bruce, I thought we only had you for 20, but I've learned the producer we have you for about 10 more in the next segment, so now I'll have time to get to my questions. But we're about to go to break. I want to pose the questions to you now, and we'll come back. What then is the real strategy of the Fortune 100 and the big mega banks manipulating our government, Israel and Europe, England? What do they want out of this destabilization? Why would they want to put the Muslim Brotherhood in all over the Middle East? Why would they want to put al-Qaeda in Libya when Gaddafi been playing ball for 7 years and taking total, Western investment? Why? Why do they want so much destabilization? Why don't they want to just be friends with everybody like Ron Paul has said? Bruce Fein, constitutional lawyer, Ron Paul advisor, straight ahead.
We're on the march. The empire's on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
Hi, folks. This is Alex Jones, and I want to tell you about the Silver Lungs generator. Now you can produce pure and endless colloidal silver and deliver the solution directly into the bloodstream by breathing the solution through the lungs. The respiratory system is the first line of defense for airborne pathogens and viruses. The Silver Lungs generator infuses the respiratory system with your self-produced nanosilver solutions and also delivers the silver nanoparticles instantly into the bloodstream. With continued legislation threatening the sale of nanosilver products, you can now produce pure and endless colloidal